Hey, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. This is Bree, your favorite unreliable source of entertainment, coming back at you with another chapter of the book we've been trying to finish for a year. Funny story, I had actually recorded this last night. I recorded this whole thing last night. This next to last chapter, which is chapter 9. I recorded it last night, and then I went to publish it, and everything except for the first 5 minutes that I had recorded got deleted somehow. Still not sure how. I'm gonna blame fairies. Mischievous little things that they are. So, I do apologize that there was no video last night. I wish there had been. My night would be a lot shorter than it is now. Because I would only have one chapter and the afterword to read tonight. But I don't. Now I have 2 chapters and the afterword that I'm going to read tonight. It's not a have to, it's a want to, because I really do want to finish this for you guys. I want to finish it for me. I want to feel accomplished in finishing this book and starting the next one and then finishing it. And we're done with that first series because there are so many more. Anyway, so we're going to jump right into it. At some point, you might hear me put a cough drop in my mouth. That is as much for my benefit as it is for yours. But yeah, let's get started. Please remember to stay hydrated. Have a great day, and let's do this. This is going to be a long one, guys. This is going to be like a 2-hour thing. So pause when you need to. All right, let's get back to chapter 9. Here we go. So, this is chapter 9 of The Woman Who Rides Like a Man by Tamora Pierce. It's in her Song of the Lioness series. Chapter 9. At the Sign of the Dancing Dove. It was almost dark when George, Merrick, and Urkel arrived at the gates of the city of Chorus. They just made it in time. The greater gate was closed and locked behind them for the night. Now, travelers would either have to enter the city on foot or turn back to a nearby way house until the gates were opened at dawn. All 3 men were tired. The ride from Port Kane, which normally took only half a day, had been filled with battling winter winds and sleet. "We've had easier travels afore now, Majesty," Urkel remarked as they turned their horses into the long alley that led to the stables at the rear of the Inn of the Dancing Dove. "Warmer, too." It was far darker in the alley than on the torchlit main streets, and George felt uneasy. Bringing up his chestnut mare, he scanned the shadows. Noticing their chief's wariness, Merrick and Urkel began to search the dark too. Readying their long staffs, only George dared to carry a sword openly, as Tortallan commoners were not permitted them. George let his mare inch forward until he spotted an overhang. Smiling grimly, he kicked the mare into a jump. The man on the overhang leapt a second too late, falling behind George. Other masked attackers surged out of the connecting alleys and doorways. George ran one through and wheeled to catch a second as he grabbed for George's saddle. A quick glance told him Merrick and Urkel remained horsed, in spite of attempts to unseat them. George's mare reared and knocked the man trying to cut her saddle girths flying. The thief grinned. Not even his most trusted people knew he had trained his favorite mount to fight like a noble's warhorse, as her Moonlight fought for Alana. The mare he had named Beauty curveted, her rolling eyes searching for someone else stupid enough to get in range of her hooves. Merrick yelled and clutched his shoulder, where a dark flower blossomed against his light-colored jacket. Distracted by his henchman, George didn't see the man on the roof overhead until he leapt onto George's back. They grappled for the knife the other man held, George using every trick he knew to dislodge his enemy. The attacker was strong, stronger than George, but he had forgotten the Thief King's almost supernatural speed. Twisting into a position that made his back scream, George got one hand free. Flicking the knife he carried hidden in his sleeve into his hand, he stabbed the attacker in a rapid-fire movement. The man gasped and fell off, rolling into the snow. As if his death was a signal, the others broke off and ran. George would have pursued them, but Urkel reminded him that Merrick was hurt. The younger man was slumped in his saddle. Blood dripped freely down his arm into the slush on the ground. Urkel wiped his knives on his sleeve and slid them back into sheaths at his wrists. "They didn't offer a sound, Majesty. Not a word. So we can't guess who they are, doubtless." George hoisted Merrick up, wishing just once for Alana's way with fire. "Will you make it to a safe place, lad?" Merrick grinned weakly. In the bits of light that came from the houses and shops on the alley, his handsome face was pale. "All these years, I've tried to take your throne from you, George. Now we both have to fight some usurper. Can you hold on for a bit more?" Merrick boosted himself erect in the saddle. "Lead on, Majesty." George took the rein of Merrick's horse and headed down a second alley, thinking hard. Until he knew the nature of the enemy, the dancing dove was not safe for him or the people closest to him. He led Merrick and Urkel to the back of his mother's walled house, trusting that his enemies had not set a trap there as well. He was reassured by the snow piled around the small barred gate. No one had walked here recently. Dismounting, he used his keys to undo the double locks before taking Merrick and Urkel inside. The young man was slumped over, and Urkel held him in place with one hand. "The stables are over there," George told him quietly as he slid Merrick off his horse. "Unless we've other gifts hid within this place is safe." "Get the lad inside," Urkel advised. "He's bleeding heavy still." A second pair of keys let George into his mother's kitchen. A kettle was on the hearth, but otherwise, the room was dark. Carefully placing Merrick on a bench by the big table, the King of Thieves slid out into the rest of the house, his every sense on alert. The ground floor was dark. Odd, for it's not even supper time, he thought. Then he stiffened against the wall, hiding himself in the shadows below the stairs leading to the second floor. A woman, not his mother, was descending. In a swift movement, he had the lady in his grip, one large hand over her mouth. "Don't scream," he advised. "Tell me what you're doing in Mr. Cooper's house." He took his hand away, and the woman drew a slow, shuddering breath. "She's ill. I'm a healing woman. Come to stay with her till she's better." She faced George, and indignation lit her brown eyes. "George Cooper, such a fright you gave me! What do you mean sneaking into your mother's house like a thief?" Recognizing her, he grinned. "Mistress Curry, I am a thief." She gasped with shock. He added, "What's wrong with my mother?" "I don't know. Since All Hallow, she's been as weak as a new kitten. Only now does she get her strength back." George looked upstairs. "I'll go to her as soon as may be. Meanwhile, I have a patient of my own who needs looking after." Curry shook her head mournfully when he brought her to Merrick. She got the wounded man braced on her shoulder easily, handling him as if he weighed nothing at all. "Open the door to the work chamber." George obeyed and lit the lamps as Curry gently placed Merrick on the long table. "I'll need boiling water. Make yourself useful," she commanded, cutting the jacket away from Merrick's shoulder. Back in the kitchen, George put the kettle on to boil as Urkel warmed his hands. Telling the older man the situation in the house, George placed him at Mistress Curry's orders before running upstairs to his mother's bedchamber. Eleni Cooper looked at her son, her hazel eyes alert. "I thought I felt you in the house. Did you frighten poor Curry to death?" She seemed unshaken to me. What's happened? I saw you not long before All Hallow, and you were fit enough then." "I tried probing someone's magic too deeply. The guards set on it were very strong." Tom," George hissed. "By the dark godmother, if he's hurt you with his precious experiments—" "Lady Alana's brother." "I should have guessed. Only he has such power these days." The woman shook her head. "If only I knew what he was up to." She sighed and returned her attention to George. "And what are you doing here at this hour? I thought you'd be stuck fast to Lady Alana's side." He shook his head, looking away. "We've parted, Mother. She's to go adventuring in May. This house has been watched for 5 weeks now." She read his thoughts, as she always had. "A man who wouldn't give his name tried to question the girl I have in to clean. She has her orders, though. She won't talk against my wishes." George could hear Mrs. Curry's uncompromising tread on the stairs. "I'll be going out again as soon as I've made sure Merrick is well." "Young Merrick is hurt." She had never met him, but George had often entertained her with stories of Merrick's attempt to put the throne of the rogue for himself. "He'll survive," Curry announced, having heard the question from outside. "He lost a deal of blood, though, and I put him in one of the small rest chambers." "But he'll live?" Only now did George betray his anxiety for his longtime rival and sometime friend. "He'll live, and cause more trouble, I don't doubt." George nodded, relieved. "Mother, I need house room for myself and another of my men, only for tonight. We'll go to Earth somewhere else tomorrow." "Of course." His mother's voice was serene, but her eyes were worried. "George, I can't help being crooked, Mother," he said, "and this is the price I must pay." He kissed her cheek and looked at Mrs. Curry. "I'll be taking Urkel with me. We'll let ourselves back in." "I'm sure you will," the healer replied severely. George laughed and patted her cheek before seeking Urkel out downstairs. They were outside the walls of the house with the doors locked behind them before Urkel asked, Where might we be going?" "The Dancing Dove," George said grimly, before pulling a wool muffler over his chin. Urkel swore fluently and followed him. As a noble studying to become a knight, Alana had spent a good amount of time at the inn called the Dancing Dove. This was George's headquarters, the royal palace for the thieves who swore allegiance to the rogue. It was the place they gathered when they were not about their business as thieves. There were a number of entrances and exits, some known only to George and Old Solemn, the innkeeper. George and Urkel entered through one of these, emerging in a darkened hallway that stretched behind the stairs to the upper stories. Sheltered by the dark, they could watch the entire common room, filled to its rafters, with thieves, prostitutes, flower sellers, fences, forgers, peddlers, fortune-tellers, healers, and sorcerers with small gifts, merchants doing secret business, rogue priests, even a nobleman or two. Old Solemn and his maids bustled about, serving food and drink, while keeping a watchful eye on the table beside the great hearth, the place where George was wont to sit. George smiled grimly. Nearly all of the people in the common room were quiet and fearful. When he sat by the fire, the din was so loud, A man couldn't hear himself think. Now the loudest noises were made by Solemn or the maids. The man named Claw at George's table, although not, the Thief King noted, on George's throne. His back was to the two men in the hallway, and only his immediate friends, three vicious brutes George would not want at his back, sat with him. George searched the room for his own court and found Scholar in a drunken huddle on the other side of the fire. Lightfingers was nowhere to be seen. Rispa was still in Port Cane, but Orem and Shem were at the back of the room playing dice. Making sure each of the 6 knives he carried was ready, George nodded to Urkel. Stepping into the light, the older man at his back, he tapped Claw on the shoulder. "Thanks for keeping it warm for me, friend," he drawled in his sweetest voice. Claw jumped, knocking over his tankard. Brown ale spilled unheeded over his breeches as he stared at George. But you... "I know. I said I'd be staying in Port Cane a bit longer," George said agreeably. "But there... I got that lonesome for all these friendly faces, and that bored without you lot keeping me on my toes." Orem and Shem had moved to the front door and were guarding it with drawn knives. 2 other men George knew he could trust came to cover the rear exit and Urkel's back. "You're dripping," he added, sliding onto his throne. Not for a second did his eyes leave Claw. The man had a reputation for doing the totally unexpected, and he might be crazy enough to attack George now. Claw stared at George for a long moment, his single pale eye unreadable. Finally he turned, snapped to his henchman. "Why are you goggling at me? Get a cloth or something and mop up this mess." His eye swiveled back to George's face. "Welcome back, Majesty." He ignored one man's clumsy efforts to wipe the ale from his breeches. "I trust your journey home was uneventful. Bit chilly." Claw had lost his initiative, but it still paid to take no chances. George accepted a tankard of mulled wine from Solemn without looking at the old man. "Has all been quiet here?" "Quiet as the Black God's temple." At last, Claw moved away from the table, his men at his back. "Don't go," George said, waving an expansive hand. "Sit with me. Tell me what's passed these weeks I've been away. 'Twould be a pity if I'd patched up any trouble in Port Cane to find it fostered here." The one-eyed thief hesitated, and George hoped that the man would be mad enough to refuse. It would be all the excuse he needed, and Claw could never hope to equal him with knives. Then Claw snapped at one of his men. "Get me a clean chat." The man hurried to obey as George realized. Claw talks like a noble. "Let me buy you a drink," George smiled, beckoning Solemn over. "I've a bone to pick with you, my friend." Claw shook his head when Solemn offered him a wine, and with a shrug, the innkeeper refilled George's tankard. "What could I have done to give offense, Majesty?" Claw asked, his face blank and innocent. "You cleared a maid sergeant to wait on me and mine in Port Cane, and she tried to poison me. Surely you looked into her background, Master Claw." "A maidservant? I sent no maidservant to wait on you," the other thief replied. George slid the grimy piece of paper across the table for Claw's scrutiny. The one-eyed man looked at it over carefully, turning it this way and that in the light as he pursed his lips. At last he shook his head and returned the paper. "It's truly an excellent forgery," he announced calmly, "but it is a forgery nonetheless. I never wrote this letter." You're certain? George asked quietly. Best think hard, for I'd not appreciate hearing otherwise at some future date. Ask anyone in the room, Claw offered, gesturing widely at their staring audience. Did I ever send a serving woman to visit His Majesty at the port? Heads were shaken slowly as George realized, with some admiration, that Claw had found the perfect excuse. With no witness, and the woman dead without having named her sponsor, he was in the clear. Your lucky friend, Claw, he told the younger man. Mayhap you'll always be so lucky to be innocent of the plots of others, of course. I hope to be, Majesty, Claw replied with a tiny smile. I do not wish to become involved in any losing propositions. When morning dawned, the common room had emptied of all but people George knew to be loyal. He had learned nothing from Claw, although he kept his rival at his side all night. That was to be expected. The learning would come now from sources he trusted. One by one, he sent his people out on errands to talk to other thieves, to find those who had not been present and to learn why, to learn who was Claw's and who was not. He sent them in pairs, warning them to watch each other's backs. Shem returned to Port Kane with a note asking Rispa to return as soon as Alana and Coram were on their way. George needed her when it came to dealing with the women who followed the rogue. They obeyed him for his looks and his charm, but Rispa knew their secrets. Finally, only Scholar was left. Even Solemn had retired to his upstairs room, exhausted with the night and its anxieties. Be discreet, but find me Sir Miles of Alou, George told the old forger. I'll need him here, disguised, by nightfall. Scholar nodded and polished off the last of his mulled wine. I know where he's to be found, and Majesty. George looked up, surprised to see tears in the old man's eyes. It's glad I am your back. That Claw's a bad one. As the door closed behind Scholar, George permitted himself a heartfelt sigh. Urkel moved out of the shadows and looked as tired as his chief. Do we sleep here? George shook his head. I don't propose giving Claw my head on a platter. We return discreetly to my mother's house. And tonight, I've a better hideaway in mind for tonight. Standing, he clapped Urkel on the shoulder. Let's go. I want to see how Merrick's doing. Miles peered at Claw through the peephole in the false wall of the common room. Behind him, George waited. Old Solemn would draw Claw into a talk as they sat in front of this very spot, and Miles would be able to hear every word. After a second, the knight drew back and nodded. Silently, George led him away from the hidden spot, taking him upstairs to the chambers where he lived in more peaceable times. There he poured Miles a brandy, waiting till the older man had refreshed himself before asking, Well? No doubt about it, Alana's foster father replied. Claw was noble born, and well educated, for a time at least. He frowned, shaking his head. The problem for me is that I know his voice. I've heard Claw speak before, and not as a thief either. He held his glass out for a refill. Perhaps my daughter is right. I should stop drinking. George grinned. Let me congratulate you, sir, on adopting Alana. 'Twas a kind-hearted thing to do. It was kind of her to let me, Miles demurred. If only she could straighten things out with Jonathan. No offense to you, George, but I do miss having her at court, as I miss having her here. the thief reassured him. Speaking of my lass, have you any idea what it was that precious brother of hers was up to on All Hallow? He told Miles what had happened to his mother. The knight sighed and shook his head. I know that a number of people in the palace with the gift were angry with Tom for days afterward. I've been hearing some odd rumors. He stopped for a moment, as if unsure of what to say, then went on. I have reason to believe Tom may have been trying his hand at raising the dead. George didn't try to mask the horror in his eyes. The dead? Is the lad insane? The dead are meant to stay so. I overheard some conversations he had with Lady Delia. Miles went on. She seemed to be taunting him, saying that if he were truly the most powerful wizard living, he could raise the dead, as Carol the Sage was said to have done. A number of the younger people in the palace have been trying to ascertain the full extent of Tom's powers. I think they regard it as a game. A game, George whispered. A game. Of setting the world by its ears, calling on power no man should use for casual purposes. That is what I believe, Miles agreed somberly. Perhaps I was wrong, George. I tried to talk with him, but I think his pride was offended when I had made his sister my heir. He taunted me with half-truths and stories, nothing definite, not even an outright lie. I know you have weighty matters on your mind, but what could be weightier than such as you believe? A smile crossed the knight's face, and for the first time, George realized how frightened Miles must be. The smile took 10 years off his age. If you would approach Tom, being that you are who you are, and as respectable as I am, George suggested with a grin. Miles grinned back. As a matter of fact, yes, Tom may talk to you, or at least reveal more of the truth. And I have my own grievance to make with the lad, George reminded him, remembering his mother's worn face. As soon as I get a hold on what passes here, I'll be up at the palace. Miles rose, gathering up his cloak. I'll start inquiries about Claw, he promised. Injuries such as he has, particularly the acid scars, are difficult to come by. They're even more so when you're nobly born. George gripped Miles's hand. You're a good friend, Sir Miles. Be assured I won't forget. After showing the knight out, George returned to hold court once more at the Dancing Dove. Once again, he stayed there all night, seeing who was there and being seen. Bits and snippets of information came to him over the next few days, as Rispa and Shem returned and went to work. No further attempts on his life occurred, although word of a costly jewelry theft that had not been cleared with him reached his ears. After a week had passed since Rispa's return, he gathered all those close to him in a room hidden beneath the streets that formed the marketplace. As they compared notes, he pictured the picture the thieves saw forming was a bleak one. He's got nearly half our people with bribes or fear, George summed up. He must have been planning this a long time, before he came to the city even. He's been working through the likes of Zarina the Witch and Knave the Fence, getting his hooks in us. He sighed. We'll have to move slow then, buy our folk back and destroy the secrets he's got against them. Why? Merrick wanted to know. Why not just kill him and be done with it? Because one of his people will come forward to take his place, George replied. I want his entire organization, not just him, because he's got help, and I want to know who it is, and I want to know who he is. Why he's not challenged me like any other rogue would have done. And if he wins? Rispa wanted to know, her brown eyes worried. If he wins, then I don't deserve to be master here. George's face was grim. If he wins, I've no guarantees he won't betray every one of us to my Lord Provost, or someone worse, because I don't know what he wants. Where he's placed now, he can rule us or destroy us. Do any of you care to wager which it is? There was no answer. He really didn't expect one. You all know what to do and where to ask your questions then. As soon as the passes open eastward, I'll send someone to find out what he was in Gala before he came to us. Tom, Lord of Trabond and the youngest living Mithrin initiate, poured a glass of wine for his guest, a mocking smile on his lips. You can't imagine what a pleasure it is for me to have my sister's friend come to visit, he said, particularly when it may be as much as your head is worth to be seen here in the palace. Why not call me Alana's lover and be honest about it? George suggested. The purple and gold brocade robe Tom wore over his stark black shirt and hose hurt the eyes. Its cost would have fed a poor commoner and his family for a year. As it is, I have a number of things I care to discuss with you. I couldn't be waiting for your next excursion into the city to meet you. Particularly since I never go to the city, Tom agreed. So, Alana has returned to the desert with the devoted Coram in tow. How selfless of her. Unless she was afraid Jonathan might convince her to take back her refusal. She shouldn't have worried. He's very much occupied with Princess Josane these days. George stared at Tom. If my lass had made no friends, only enemies, he thought, and if she'd been too frightened to let others know she was a human being, disguise and all, she might well have turned out like this monster. He's all brain and cynicism now, with no heart left in him. Well, you're a nasty bit of work, aren't you? He remarked amiably. Why don't we talk of your goings-on during All Hallow? A look of grudging respect entered Tom's violet eyes. I'm sure I told Alana and you I was working on experiments. George made a disgusted face. And I'm sure it was no such thing. Didn't you feel my mother testing your garden spells? Or were so many trying to learn what you were up to that you took no notice of those left half dead? I felt someone test the ward, Tom admitted, but I was busy. I'm sorry it was your mother who was harmed, but she had no business prying into that kind of magic. She's fortunate to be alive. Glad you think so. And what experiments were so important that you must put such spells to protect them? When Tom didn't answer, George pressed. Who were you trying to raise from the dead? Tom jumped to his feet. The mocking expression wiped from his face. You dare question me, George Cooper? He yelled, fury radiating from him in waves. Your relationship with my sister means nothing here. So do not think to try my patience. George stood, his hazel eyes grim. Don't think to threaten me, laddie, he warned softly. I won't stand for it. I have nothing more to say to you, Tom gritted. Get out. I'll take my leave then, George replied. But I don't need my sight to tell me you're in trouble, great sorcerer or no. He hesitated, then wryly. Doubtless I'll live to regret this, but for your sister's sake, you may call on me in need. Tom drew himself up. I am more than able to handle my own affairs. Is that why you're shaking so? George inquired. Best have a shot of brandy to steady your nerves, my lord. I'd hate to think there was anything in this world of ours could be beyond the skills of one such as yourself. Bowing mockingly, he left Tom. And there's not a thing I can do or say until I know what's riding him like the old hag of the graveyards, the thief told himself grimly, as he slipped out of the palace. I'll bet every knife I own he's gotten himself into trouble that won't easily be fixed. George smiled. Trouble with the rogue. Trouble with Tom. The future looked exciting. At least he wouldn't be bored. And as long as he kept his wits about him, it was good to be back in chorus. Okay. That was chapter 9. We're really just going to go straight into chapter 10. Just this slight pause in there. So a lot's happening. We'll probably discuss a little bit at the end. But thoughts, put them in the comments. You can edit them so you can add more thoughts later. Alrighty. Hold on. Hydration. Please don't forget to drink water. Chapter 10. The Doomed Sorceress. In a way, it was disappointing for Alana to find the Bloody Hawk had done very well for themselves in her absence. No problems had arisen that Kara and Karem could not handle with Omar Kham's advice. The school for sorcerers was learning the many forms of fire magic, something Alana had explored as far as she wanted to. She diverted the shamans for an afternoon to the problem of lightning, which remained broken despite all the spells she tried. But their efforts to repair it came to nothing. The last try blew down several tents and brought Halif Sif to command them to stop while within the village precincts. Discouraged, Alana often went riding alone, deliberately returning after sunset to avoid the moment they joined with the voice of the tribes. She only missed John at those times. She missed George with a sullen ache that refused to go away, because of all people, George made her laugh. She was grooming Moonlight after one ride, wondering what she would do now when Halif Sif found her. "You are restless," he commented. "What troubles you?" Putting her mare's combs away, she replied, "Did you know, 6 days ago, I celebrated my first year as a knight?" Coram mentioned it, the headman admitted. "Anniversaries make me think. I've been remembering all that's happened since I won my shield." Falling into step together, they walked toward the hill overlooking the village. "You slew the sorcerer Duke." "You know, Halif Sif, I don't dream about that much anymore. Maybe it was a waste, and I acted too quickly, but it's over. So much has gone on since then. I came here, I met you, and Kara, and Karem, Ishak also," he reminded her as they slowly climbed the hill. Alana nodded, her mouth twisted sadly. "I guess what happened to Ishak taught me I can't punish myself for things that are over and done. After all, I had to get on with teaching Kara and Karem, not with mourning him. And I'm proud of the girls. They are pupils to make any shaman proud, any tribe for that matter." At the hill's summit he bowed, indicating a flat-topped rock was to be her seat. Alana laughed and dusted it off, noticing the blackened spot around it from the magic she had worked here with her apprentices, and the scorch marks left by Jonathan's right of the voice. She sat, and Halif Sif knelt beside her, watching the village. "You know, it's funny. I've learned more about other women since coming here than I ever did before. Pages and squires don't spend much time with women, and besides, she grinned, I was notoriously shy when it came to girls. Halif chuckled. And so you've discovered you like your own sex? How can I not like other women? Alana inquired. Particularly after knowing Kara and Karem, and Mari Farrar and Farda. I don't feel nearly as odd about being female as I did before I came here. But now you must be moving on, he asked gently. I hate it when I'm not doing something useful, she admitted. After spending all those years studying things or performing duties around the palace, I've gotten into the habit of working. With Kara and Karem doing so well, there's nothing for me to do. I've been thinking of riding south with Coram to see what I can find. I know of a task for you, if you wish it. There was a note of diffidence in the headman's voice she had never heard before. Name it. He smiled reluctantly. I have a friend. A woman who is a sorceress in Aloes, near Lake Tirigan in the hill country. For 3 nights I have dreamed she was in peril, cut off from me by fire. He shook his head. We grew up together. Before she discovered her gift, she could not stay. But there was no woman who rides like a man to say she could be a shaman. But she returns here often. Is she the reason that Halif Sif never married? Alana wondered. I would go to her myself, but my duties do not permit me such freedom. Alana put her hand on his arm. I'll go. Don't worry about your friend. If she's in trouble, I'll do everything I can to help. For a moment, he covered her hand with his, the lines of concern smoothing out of his face. Thank you, Alana. Alois was 5 days' ride to the north through hill country. Coram and Alana donned leather and mail for the trip instead of burnouses. Alana made sure her uncovered lioness shield was prominently displayed. Dressed as Bazir, they might have encountered trouble. Dressed as Tortalian soldiers, they did not glimpse another soul. During the ride, Faithful stuck close to Alana, never straying. The knight knew her pet was worried. What's going to happen that you aren't telling me? She finally demanded, when they passed the marker indicating the village was near. I don't know, Faithful admitted. I just have a bad feeling. He settled down in his cup, the tip of his tail switching anxiously. It was a beautiful day for January. The breezes were warm, and the snow had melted from the ground. Alana expected children to be playing outside the huts that grew thicker as they approached the village, but no one was in sight. If people watched from inside their homes, there was no sign. A noise disturbed her, and she jerked around in her saddle. Coram was taking the canvas wrapping from his round leather shield, his dark face grim. I don't like what I'm feeling here, he admitted. Do ye? Alana grimaced and undid the fastenings that held her shield over Moonlight's haunches. Settling the lioness rampant on her left arm, she drew the crystal sword with her right. It doesn't even hum at me anymore. Then she heard people shouting in anger and fear. It was impossible to make out the words, but the voices came from the village's center, behind the first wall of huts. They trotted forward, scanning watchfully, now as they made for the source of the cries. No one ran out to greet them. The huts of the village proper were as deserted as those outside. There was a mob in the wide space that was the heart of the village. A tall, angular man in tattered gray robes, stood on a platform that raised him head and shoulders above those around him. Alana's senses prickled with uncomfortable recognition before she and Coram stopped beneath the eaves of a large cottage. They examined the area for armed men, other than the villagers who waved sticks and farming tools, waiting to see what the fuss was about. "Yazed will have your souls!" howled the man on the platform. His wide eyes gleamed with fantastic joy. Behind him was a tall post, thrust against the sky. The sight of it made Alana sweat. Where had she seen this picture before? "Yazed is angry! He is ferocious! Obey his command! Cleanse yourself of the ancient evil, or Yazed comes with plague and famine to cleanse you! Obey the servant of Yazed! Only then will you escape the wrath of the God of Stones!" A knot of men, struggling with something, encircled the tall post. Alana remembered. Twice she had seen this place, and the madman extorting people. Only in her second vision, the one given to her when Ishak had destroyed himself, she had seen a woman burning at the post. A knot of villagers struggled with something as Coram whispered, "This Yazed is one of the Scanra gods, I think. A nasty fellow, dead set against witchcraft or any magic." Alana frowned. Why had the goddess sent her this particular vision? What meaning could it have? Her nostrils caught the scent of burning wood, and someone screamed in agony. "Now! You do Yazed's work!" the priest screamed. "Burn the sorceress! Cleanse this village of her taint!" The people roared their satisfaction. The woman they were burning screamed again. Alana reacted. A year ago, she would have hesitated. A year ago, she had not been a Bazir shaman. Bolts of purple fire flamed from her open palm, knocking those who touched to the ground. "No!" she screamed. When they turned to charge, she pointed the crystal sword, opening a chasm at their feet. "Fiend!" the priest cried, holding up a large black star-shaped pendant. A jewel at its middle twinkled in the sun and caught Alana's eye. But that trick had been played on her once before. Duke Roger had been far cleverer at it than this man. She reached out, putting her lioness shield between her and the priest as she whispered spell words. The priest shrieked, at first his jewel, then the pendant, shuddered and cracked into 1,000 pieces in his grip. Grim-faced, Alana rode forward, Coram at her back. Faithful stood erect on the saddle before her, back arched, fur erect, hissing with fury. A villager ran yelling at Alana, swinging a hoe. Coram swung between them on his bay, knocking the man aside with the flat of his broadsword. Several rocks flew by. One struck Alana on the head. For a moment she reeled sickly. Sheer fury rose up in her, spilling from the crystal sword in a bolt of magic, hurling 3 of the rock throwers in the air. The villagers broke and ran. Alana freed both hands and reached for the clear azure sky. "Goddess!" she cried to her patron. "Give me rain!" For a moment, all time froze. Then the ember stone began to pulse in a slow, majestic rhythm as great thunderheads blotted out the sun. There was a deafening crack of thunder, and the rain flooded down, dousing the fire at the stake. "Thank you, great lady," Alana whispered, feeling the first niggling touches of exhaustion from her use of magic. The priest, armed with a dagger, launched himself at her. Faithful jumped to meet him and landed on the man's face. The fanatic screamed, trying to dislodge the cat until Coram ended his cries with a sword thrust. "Don't waste yourself on the likes of yon," he advised Faithful as the cat disentangled himself from the body. Reaching the stake, Alana cut free the woman they had tried to burn. The victim slumped to her knees among the still smoldering logs, oblivious to her hurts and to the rain. Coram joined them, pulling the injured woman into his saddle, cushioning her gently. "We've got to move," he yelled over the thunder. "They'll be back, better armed, I don't doubt." "You killed the priest!" A young man, armed with a long axe, was advancing on them. "His god will hold us to blame!" Alana dismounted and drew the crystal blade. "Get her out of here!" she ordered Coram, settling her shield on her arm once more. The ex-soldier hesitated and she yelled, "Do what I say, before the villagers come!" Frowning, he obeyed. Alana faced the armed villager. "Don't be a fool," she told him. "I'm a full knight. You won't stand a chance." "You lie!" The man charged, holding his axe in a clearly practiced manner. Alana caught the swinging axe on her shield, knocking it aside. In her same motion, she sliced up from under the shield with the crystal blade. The man jumped back, skidding in the mud. Alana hacked the axe blade from its handle. The crystal blade hummed, filling her with a sick, killing joy. She thought she had wiped from its makeup. Alana staggered, her vision clouding. The young man yelled with delight, swinging the axe haft in a blow that connected solidly with Alana's unprotected right side. She dropped to her knees, just getting the shield up in time as he swung on her head. The crystal sword screamed in her mind, demanding the life of the man who was attacking her. Alana's hand was sweating, making the hilt slippery in her grasp. Was this how Aknan ibn Azir felt when he used his life force trying to kill me? She wondered. She threw the sword aside and hurled herself off the ground, ramming the shield at the villager. He yelled and dropped back, letting the axe haft fall. Alana swooped and grabbed it. She put herself between the crystal sword and the villager, watching him intently. "The sword's magic," she panted as he stared at it. "If you take it, it'll kill you. Why would I throw it away otherwise?" "I don't believe you," he gasped. "Then try to get it." He darted to the side and forward, thinking she would not be fast enough. Alana brought the axe haft down on his head, knocking him unconscious to the ground. For a moment she swayed, gathering the strength to kneel and see if she had killed him. His pulse was steady and strong. He had a lump on his head, but she judged he would survive. "Maybe now you won't go attacking strange knights," she whispered, wiping the sweat from her face. She picked up the crystal sword and resheathed it, feeling no trace of its magic. "Maybe that was its way to try to turn me to breaking and killing," she told Faithful, who had stayed well out of the battle. "Are you willing to bet on that?" the cat wanted to know. Alana gathered Moonlight's reins and mounted. "Not in the least." Faithful jumped onto the saddle, and Alana turned the mare away from the village. She stopped out at the square's edge to look back. The tall post stood still. Lit by flickering lightning, Alana pointed at it and spoke a single powerful word. The stake blasted from the ground as if shot from a bow, shattering into fragments no longer than toothpicks. Alana and Coram halted by the marker they had seen this morning. Hurriedly, the knight spread a ground cover on the wet grass. Coram gently placed the sorceress on it. The woman they had saved was in her 40s, dark-haired, her eyes a deep brown. Old and new bruises covered her. A trickle of fresh blood accented the corner of her mouth. She was badly burned. Taking her hand, Alana reached with her gift, already knowing what she would find. "Don't spend your strength, child." The woman's voice was hoarse. "I know I'm dying." Alana withdrew, sick at heart. "How did you get such deep injuries?" "They stoned me yesterday," was the answer. "My poor children. Who will look after them now?" "You're sorry for them?" Coram asked, astonished. It has been a terrible winter," she whispered. "The food was running out. Yazid's priest told them it was because of me, that the food stores would renew themselves if they had me killed. They were hungry." "Fools," Coram muttered. The sorceress took Alana's hand. "You two have given me the death I did not hope to have, lying at peace among friends. Halif Sif sent you?" Alana nodded. "I prayed he could help. Never think you came too late. My life was over when they laid hands on me a week ago. How could I live knowing the ones I had brought into the world and cared for wanted me dead?" Squeezing Alana's hand, she said, "Open your heart to me." Alana felt the sorceress in her mind as a kind, gentle presence easing her bitterness over the woman's impending death. A second later, the older female released Alana's hand, sweating and trembling from her efforts. "You are the one I need. Listen." "Alana of Trabant, I can give you a gift. Will you accept it?" Alana touched the ember stone. It was warm, but not hot, and she realized what the sorceress had to say was important. "Go on." The woman's battered lips parted in a smile. "Listen well. You have the knowledge to restore your broken sword. It was in the spell that you made one with the bloody hawk and one with your foster father. It lies in the spell that made the prince the voice of the tribes. Take the crystal sword and make it one with the sword that is your own. You will need it. A dark time comes for Tortle." Alana nodded, biting a trembling lip. The sorceress reached inside her tattered dress and produced a scorched silk envelope that bulged with its contents. "I would have let this burn, but now you may take it to Halif Sif. He will know what to do." She shuddered, her limbs twitching. When the convulsion passed, she said, "Let nothing stop you from giving that envelope to Halif Sif." "I'll do it," Alana told her. "Don't fret." The woman nodded. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "Thank you." She smiled at Faithful. "All three of you." Her breathing was suddenly shallow. "Tell Halif I will be waiting when he makes the journey." Her voice trailed off. Within moments, Her breath had stopped, and Alana gently closed her eyes. Tear-blind, she stood. Coram buried the sorceress. Did you know her name? Alana shook her head, watching her companion shovel the last bit of dirt into the grave. Halif never mentioned it, and neither did she. A pity to leave her without a marker, Coram admitted somberly. But it's our lives to go to the village and find out. She'll have a marker, Alana whispered. You don't have the strength, Faithful cautioned. When will you learn to stop? I'm going to do this one last thing, she retorted. Stand back, both of you. As Coram and Faithful obeyed, she clenched her fists. There was no spell for what she wanted to do, but she was determined not to let that stop her. If the will to accomplish was the greatest part of any magic, she had only to tell the earth what she required, and that was what she did. The ground beyond the head of the grave shook as she pulled at it. When she opened her tightly closed eyes, a granite pillar stood to mark the burying place. Deeply graven letters proclaimed, "Here lies the sorceress of Alois, who loved the people who killed her." Coram took over, getting her as far away from the village as possible. She was barely conscious when he chose a campsite. She collapsed exhausted onto the ground, barely waking when Coram tucked her into her bedroll. He couldn't wake her the next morning. Since Faithful showed no sign of alarm, he settled down for a day of relaxation, keeping a watchful eye on his night mistress as he whittled. It was sunset when she awoke, getting away from a dream. The throne room had filled, the king and queen on their thrones, Duke Gareth beside the king, John with the queen. Although she could see clearly, she heard no sounds coming from people's mouths. Her friends watched with mingled awe and horror as Tom introduced a bowing man to his sovereigns. That man looked into Alana's eyes. He was Roger of Conte. She could hear him clearly as he remarked, "I don't kill easily, do I, lioness? But thank your brother for this, and mind you bring back my sword." She sat bolt upright, her clothing damp with sweat. "Nightmares again?" Coram asked, stirring a pot of stew. It was nearly dark. "They're never real, lass. Have some food." She told him the dream as they ate. The sight of their fire and of Faithful playing with wood shavings finally reassured her. "Sometimes I wonder if I don't want him to come back," she sighed, putting down her bowl. "But that doesn't make sense, does it?" Coram blew an experimental note on the flute he had carved. "Well, the two of you had some unfinished business," he commented. "And think, it's not granted to all of us to have one great enemy. The Duke was yours. The problem is that once you've vanquished such an enemy, life might be a little empty. You've spent so much time thinking about him, and now he's not there to worry you anymore." "You don't think I'm having, well, prophetic dreams? Have you had them before?" "No. Visions sometimes, but not dreams." "Doesn't seem likely you'd start having dreams at such a late date. Your dreams are still just dreams." He watched with misgiving as she put the crystal blade and the 2 parts of lightning on the ground before her. "Now what are you up to?" "She told me how to mend lightning, and that's what I'm going to do." Faithful came to sit beside her as Coram backed away. For a moment, Alana stared resentfully at the 2 long scars on her right forearm. Gritting her teeth, she drew a 3rd wound beside them with her dagger, letting her blood drip onto both swords. A harsh wind sprang up. Their fire burned purple. "One," Alana whispered, closing her eyes and fumbling for the best words. "Crystal and whole, unbreakable, strong. One. Crystal and hilt, straight steel, shared in two." Dust whipped against her face. "Two." She moved the three pieces closer to each other, separate, yet together, becoming. Power shuddered through her body. "One," she yelled over the shrieking wind. One blade, unbreakable and whole." A last flare of power blasted through her. Unbearable in its strength, Alana fainted. "Of all the crazy, stupid stunts," Corum's familiar grumble soaked through the darkness around her. "You'd think you'd wait till you recovered from the fireworks yesterday, but not ye." Alana swam up out of the dark, toward his voice. "No, you must prove you're the Lord Tom and can do anything." Alana forced her eyes open, grinning weakly at the man who was propping her up. She was wrapped in blankets. "I just wanted to fix my sword. No more fireworks tonight. Corum, I promise." He snorted, clearly disbelieving her. Carefully, he picked up something and fitted her hand around the hilt. She was almost too tired to lift it. Lightning's batter round crystal topped the silver hilt. The blade was thin, and as lightning's had been. It was steel with a ghostly gray sheen. There was no feel of alien magic or anger in it, and the sword fit Alana's hand well. As she looked it over, Corum observed, "You've traveled a distance, haven't you? 'Twas only a year ago you said you'd never use magic again. Now you're a shaman and making up your own spells." Alana smiled ruefully. "Have you ever noticed that when you try to deny some part of yourself, things fall out so you need that part more than any other? I was afraid of magic, partly because I was sure it couldn't be controlled. But the crystal sword taught me it can. Before I came to the Bazaar, I saw a lot of magic used only to harm. Being shaman cured me of that. I guess I'm not afraid of my gift anymore. I'm the one who wields it. My gift doesn't wield me. And now I can help the people I swore to help with my abilities. Does that make any sense?" she asked worriedly. Corum grinned. "As much sense as anything from the mouth of a noble." "You've been living amongst thieves too long," Alana told him. Testing her thumb on the sword's edge, she cut herself. Smiling with delight, she hefted lightning. "Now I'm ready for anything." "Speaking of anything," Corum said as he banked the fire for the night, "what's next? Where do we go in the morning?" "Someplace new," Faithful wanted to know. His tail was twitching with excitement. Alana crawled into her bedroll, feeling exhausted but satisfied. "Well, we need to take the sorceress's envelope to Halif Sif," she yawned. It must be pretty important, or she wouldn't have tried to burn it rather than let anyone she didn't trust have it." "Very well. And then?" "I think we'll ride south," Alana told her companions. "King Barnish of Marin is holding a great tournament in April. I want to start acting like a knight again, and maybe we'll find some adventures along the way. Sound good?" "It's about time," Faithful grumbled as he curled up beside her nose. From his bedroll, Corum said, "It sounds beautiful. Now get some rest, lioness." Alana reached beside her and found Lightning's hilt. She gripped her restored blade as she moved towards sleep, a wary smile on her lips. Her first year as a knight was over. She had survived. And if there was trouble ahead, well, she was ready for it. On a March afternoon, a knight and a man-at-arms reached the gate of the Maronite city of Berat. The guards hid their smiles as they looked the noble over. In size, the beardless youth could as well have been a squire, with only a shield to reveal his higher rank. They wondered aloud if the youngster could hold his lance, let alone unseat an opponent with it. Hearing them, the knight favored them with a broad grin. The guards, liking his reaction, fell silent. The man-at-arms gave a tug on their pack-horse's lead rein, and the small party moved through the gates into the city. Most nobles dressed richly, but this knight wore well-traveled leather, covered with a white burnous, like those worn by the vizier of the Tortalan desert. With the burnous's hood pushed back, everyone could see the knight's hair was copper, cut so it brushed his shoulders. His eyes were an odd purple shade that drew stares, his face determined. Before him, in a cup fixed on his mare's saddle, rode a black cat. The man-at-arms was dressed like the knight. There were no grins for him. He was a burly, dark-haired commoner with no-nonsense eyes. It was he who asked directions to the inn called the Wandering Bard, while the knight looked with interest at the streets around them. They set off in the direction of the inn, picking their way through the crowds with ease. The cat swiveled his head, looking at the knight. "They think you're a boy." To most, his utterances sounded like those of any cat. To the few he chose, he spoke as plainly as a human. "Good," the knight replied. "That's less fuss over me." "Is that why you left your shield covered?" "Be sensible, faithful," was the tart reply. "The shield's covered because I don't want it to get dust all over it. It takes forever to clean. This far south, who'd have heard of me?" The man-at-arms, who'd drawn level with them, grinned. "You'd be surprised. News has a way of traveling." The common room of the Wandering Bard was deserted except for the innkeeper. Winfeld, who was resting after the afternoon rush. He'd just begun his own meal when a stable boy charged in. "You want to hurry, master?" the boy puffed, excited. "There's a knight in the yards. A turtle knight." "What of that?" Winfeld replied. "We've had knights at the Bard afore." "Not a knight like this un," the boy announced. "This un be a girl." "Don't joke with me, lad," Winfeld began. Then he remembered. "That's right. Sir Miles wrote me of the lass he adopted a year past. Said she went as a lad for years, as page and squire, till she was knighted. That was when our stables almost burned, and I didn't pay his letter any attention I ought." "What's her shield?" "Shield's a covered," was the reply. "But her man bears a pin like one. It's red with a gold cat a-rearing on it." "That's her. Alana of Trebond and Alou, Sir Miles's heir." Winfeld got up, removing his apron to throw it on the table. "And with the Shang dragon here already, it's bound to be a good week. The stable yard, you said?" Alana of Trebond and Alou, sometimes called the Lioness, for the cat on her shield, was surprised to be greeted by the innkeeper. The host of such a prosperous house did not meet his guests, unless they were wealthy or famous. Since she had lived in Tortle's great southern desert for over a year, Alana did not realize she had become famous. Afoot, her cat cradled in her arms, She was short and stocky, sturdy rather than muscular. She did not look as if she could have disguised her sex for years to undergo a night's harsh training, and she certainly did not look as if she would excel at her training to the point where some men who were qualified to judge such matters would call her the finest squire in Tortle. She also did not look like the adopted heir of one of the realm's wealthiest noblemen. "I don't know if Sir Miles told you," Winfeld explained, "but I'm honored to serve his interests here in Barat. I bid you and your man welcome to the Wandering Bard." He nodded to the man-at-arms, who supervised the stablings of the horses. "Whatever you wish, just let my folk know. Would the two of you like a cool drink to lay the dust?" "I'll see to the packs and the rooms," the man told them. "I know," he said quickly, as his night mistress opened her mouth. "You're wanting a bath. Hot water, soap, and soon." He grinned at Winfeld. "She's that finicky for a lass who's living on the road." Alana shrugged. "What can I say? I like to be clean. Thanks, Coram." "He's been with you so long?" Winfeld asked, as he showed her to the common room, indicating a seat, and sat down facing her. "Forever," Alana replied. "Coram changed my diapers, and he never lets me forget it. He helped raise me and my twin brother." To a maid who'd come to ask what she'd like, Alana said, "Fruit juice would be wonderful if you have it." The innkeeper smiled as the serving girl left. "The Wandering Bard has whatever may hit your fancy, Lady Alana. How is your honored father, if you don't mind me asking?" The maid returned with a pitcher and a tankard on a tray, presenting them to Alana. Taking a swallow from her tankard, the knight sank back with a sigh. "He was fine last I heard from him 2 months ago. Coram and I have been on the road for weeks. I've never been out of Tortle before, so we took our time. Merrin doesn't seem much different." Winfeld grinned. "Nor should it. Tortle and Toussaint and Merrin being cut from the same cloth. Things change east of here." Alana saw a shadow cross her host's face. "Trouble?" "Just the sickness that comes on the land now and then," was the reply. "There's a war in Sarrain the last 18 months or so. Only a Saren could tell you what started it, or what'll finish it. But there," Winfield added, seeing a chambermaid at the door. "Your rooms be ready, along with your bath." The knight picked up her cat, who was playing with Winfeld's apron. "Come on, faithful," she groaned, settling him on her shoulder. "Let's get clean." A chill ran through the innkeeper as he watched them go. Only now had he seen that the cat's eyes were not a proper shade of amber, green, or gray. They were as purple as Alana's. Instinctively, he made the sign against evil. Guys, we did it. We finished the book. I know, amazing, right? It's only been a year and some change since we started it. I'm so glad that we finally got to finish it. I feel so accomplished. We're on to the next one tomorrow. Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, I had meant to film or do the recording for the 9th chapter on Wednesday and the 10th chapter on Thursday. See, what happened was, Wednesday night I had a technical issue. Thursday night my stomach decided to rebel, and so I only got to do the first part of the 9th chapter, and then I was like, I'm gonna go to bed. I need sleep. So I did. I went to bed, and then I went to work and got off work and hung out and ate dinner, and now I finished the book. And again, I'm feeling rather accomplished. And it's only 10:30. So Yay me. And it was under 2 hours. Yay! Anyway, now that I've babbled a little bit, tomorrow I'm going to read the first, I think, 2 chapters of the fourth Alana book called Lioness Rampant. That's the last book in the Alana series. And then we get to move on to the next series. But before we do that, I think I'm going to read more of the Hunger Games. That's definitely coming Sunday. I'm going to read the next 2 chapters, I think. There's so many chapters in the Hunger Games, but we'll go over that when I read that on Sunday. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your comments down below. All comments are welcome. I won't argue with you, but I'll certainly give you a thumbs up or a heart. Anyway, stay hydrated. Get your sleep. Enjoy your day. Find hobbies. Hobbies are a good thing to have. They take your time, your mind away from the troubles of the world. I'll see you guys later. Enjoy it. Okay, bye.